Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first episode of Combat Chronicles. Now, Combat Chronicles is going to focus on UFC fights, and it is a segment of the show which I promised I would bring to you. I have been on a little bit of a hiatus, but now I'm back and I'm going to talk about this weekend's UFC event, which is a fight night where Topuria and Josh Emmett are heading the main card. Now, this fight is a very interesting one, and because it is a fight night, the other fights are between relatively unknown fighters, so I will not be getting into all of them. I will maintain my focus on the Emmett Topuria fight because in my mind this is a very important fight. This could very easily have been a co-main event in a UFC main event, and yet we are getting to see it as the main event of a fight night. Why I say this fight is important between Josh Emmett and Topuria is because Josh Emmett has in a sense become the gatekeeper of the featherweight division, Alexander Volkanovski being the champion obviously, and because he lost his fight to Yair Rodriguez in his last outing, he is now being seen as the stepping stone that every contender has to go over, which is why he's being matched up with Ilia Topuria, who, if you know Ilia Topuria, is an excellent fighter. He is at the cusp of getting a title shot, which is why this fight will probably decide the next contender to go up against whoever is the champion at that point. And why do I say whoever is the champion is because Yair Rodriguez has already been put on that spot, that number one contender spot, and he will be taking on Volkanovski in the near future. Even though I like Volkanovski quite a bit, I like what he does, I like his grit and his toughness and his great skills. I do believe that Yair Rodriguez is a very good fighter and he might be able to take the belt away from Volkanovski. So that is something to look out for. But that is not what we are going to focus on today. Josh Emmett and Ilia Topuria are two of the best fighters in the featherweight division. Emmett, as you would probably know, has a lot of power in his right hand. He is very big, he is very strong, and I'm going to speak about some of his attributes because I have them here on my laptop. So Emmett has a record of 18 wins, 3 losses and 0 no contests, which is a relatively good record considering the fact that his only recent loss was to Yair Rodriguez, who is going to be fighting for the title. You can say that Josh Emmett is amongst the elite of the elite in the featherweight division right now. He has an average fight time of 12 minutes 51 seconds, so we'll round that off to about 13 minutes. Considering the fact that most of his fights have been 3-rounders, you do get a glimpse into how he approaches the fight in a length when it comes to the length of a fight. So he is not somebody that gasses out very quickly, even though he is quite strong. He has, though, been known to gas out in grappling intensive and wrestling intensive fights. So wherever somebody takes control of him, for example, and puts his weight on him, puts pressure on him, he is seen to have lost a little bit of his strength and his endurance in those cases. We can make a case for that in the Rodriguez fight, although Rodriguez mostly brought him into a grappling exchange while he was on his back. So it is not the same thing, but still, grappling is not Emmett's base, so it is not what he wants to do, which is why it taxes his body more than his particular skill sets do. Moving on then, we know the weight class is 145. They will cut weight, they will come within the weight limit and weigh in, and then they will put on a lot of muscle. Now in the case of Topuria and Emmett, I think Emmett is the one who will cut a lot more and bring a lot more muscle to the fight, rehydrate a lot more after the weight cut is done. And Topuria is a very strong fighter, don't get me wrong. He has power in both hands, he has very good kicks, and he is an excellent wrestler, so he is very well rounded. But I would give the strength advantage to Josh Emmett because he has that great equalizer of a right hand. And it is not just a figure of speech. His right hand is genuinely the great equalizer. It can put your spark out in a second. So I would give the strength advantage to Josh Emmett in this fight. Now, if you compare the reach, there isn't much of a difference. Josh Emmett has a 70-inch reach, Topuria has a 69-inch reach. So there isn't too much to talk about there. But there is a big age difference. So Josh Emmett is 85 born. If you compare him to some other fighters, a lot of them have retired already. So he is not a very young fighter, and he is looking at the tail end of his career. So this fight is even more important for him, because if he can get the march on a title shot now by winning this fight and maybe one more, then he can actually make a serious bid for the title. If he fails to do that though, then he might finish off his career in a limbo and not get a title shot. So that is something that will put a little bit of desperation in Josh Emmett. Ilia Topuria, on the other hand, is 97 born. He's quite young, and he's that quintessential young fighter who's on the up and up. So he is aiming for a title shot, probably post Yair Rodriguez's fight with Volkanovski. And if he does manage to pull that off, he would be one of the youngest champions, especially in the division. So that is something very interesting, and that's something to look out for. Now, if we look at the strikes, and if we look at the approach that Josh Emmett and Topuria take to fighting their opponents, there is a marked difference in what they do. Like I said, Topuria is an all-rounder, and he is excellent at everything. So you cannot really say that he is a wrestler who can also box or kick, or he is a Muay Thai fighter who can also wrestle and grapple. He is genuinely good at all of those things. He has very strong kicks, the kind of kicks where you hear the snap through the camera when you're watching it. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend getting kicked by somebody like that. I think he kicks as hard as a mule. He has very strong hands. He has power in both his hands, so it is not like he can only hit you and take your head off with the right. He can do it with the left as well. The one issue though with his striking is that he tends to leave his chin open, and he doesn't always tuck his chin when he is striking. So when he is swinging through the motions left to right or right to left, he tends to bring his hands down and swing a little wildly, which is one of the reasons why in his last fight, in his second last fight against Herbert, he got wobbled and he had to go through a little bit of adversity. So that is something that will make Josh Emmett very happy, because that Herbert fight and then the fight against Mitchell, these were two fights that in a way they showed that there were chinks in Topuria's armor. Even though he won those fights, he did have a difficult time in certain sections of those fights. So it is a show of the fact that Topuria is not bulletproof, which is something that will give Josh Emmett a lot of heart, because he is the one who has lost recently to Yair Rodriguez, and there's no shame in that. But he is still the one who is coming into this with a little less momentum and a lot more to prove. Moving from their style of fighting, we're going to talk about a few statistics. So if you look at the striking in particular, now we know Josh Emmett is a very strong fighter physically, not just in how hard he can hit you, but also in the fact that he is very strong in the clinch and in grappling exchanges. Regardless, he also has the ability to put out a lot of striking output. So if you compare their strikes per minute, you get 4.17 from Josh Emmett and 3.32 from Topuria. Now it has a little bit to do with the fact that Topuria is more likely to use his striking exchanges as inlets into initiating a grappling exchange or trying to take the opponent down. Whereas Josh Emmett is more focused on keeping the striking exchange going, and then grappling is something that comes in later if needed. It is not necessarily what Josh Emmett wants to go for because he has a lot of belief in his power. So that does show the difference there. But we have to be wary of the fact that Josh Emmett has the ability to put a pace on Topuria because he has very good cardio. So if he has to stay in a fight for 3 or 5 rounds, he can do that unless you hurt him badly. So Topuria will have a hard fight. It is not going to be an easy matchup for him. And he will have to make sure that he keeps his hands down because his weakness is what could lead to Josh Emmett utilizing his biggest strength. If Topuria tries to stay in the phone booth and punch it out with Josh Emmett with wild hooks and wild swings and does not tuck his chin in, does not keep his defense intact, does not keep his hands up, Josh Emmett will hit him, and he will hit him hard enough to take his head off. So that could be something that could end the fight. Topuria has to be very, very careful of his striking defense. If you look at the striking accuracy, now Topuria has better striking accuracy. He has 49% striking accuracy compared to Emmett's 37. Now that shows us that Topuria is more accurate with his strikes because he is more careful about how much output he is putting into the fight and how much energy he is expending. So he will focus on hitting you when he knows he can get to you, and then try and exchange a wrestling or a grappling, initiate a wrestling or a grappling exchange. Emmett does not do that, so his focus is more on hitting you and trying to overwhelm you with his strikes. So it is not trying to overwhelm you with just the volume of the strikes, but mostly the fact that out of that volume, if 37% is hitting you, that 37% is putting a dent in you. So it is not what you want to absorb. These are certain idiosyncrasies in their approach towards the striking game. Now here is something interesting. When it comes to how many strikes these two absorb, so how many hits they take, Josh Emmett is likely to take almost twice as many strikes as Ilia Topuria, which does not bode well for him because even though he has a decided strength advantage, he's very, very strong. Topuria is no slouch. Topuria is almost equally strong and has the ability to knock anybody out. So Josh Emmett will have to be mindful of his defense as well, just as much as Topuria has to be mindful of Josh Emmett's offense. So yeah, that is an interesting factor. Both of these fighters will have to be careful of each other's power while making sure that they're able to apply each other's power and their best attributes on each other. So in that case, this is an interesting aspect to focus on. Whoever takes more hits in this fight will likely win the fight, and that sounds quite obvious, but that is not always the case. So if you look at somebody like Marlon Chito Vera, so Chito has the ability to hit you far less than you hit him, but he will come out of the fight looking hardly damaged at all or damaged to the slightest, while the opponent is banged up. He looks like he's been hit by a bus. So that does make a difference, and damage is a big marker when it comes to scoring fights. So even if you don't get a knockdown, if you're putting on more damage, even though your rate of strikes is not as quick, you're not landing as much, if the ones that you're landing are very, very effective, if you're putting on a lot of damage, it can swing the fight in your favor. So these two fighters will have to remember that, because in this fight I think damage will play a big role, because neither one of them are easy to put out. They have reasonably good chins, and both of them have the ability to damage their opponents with a single hit. So you don't even need that cumulative Nate Diaz style damage where you have to take 30 punches before you feel the effect and you're bleeding. These guys can cut you, they can give you swellings, they can break parts of your face with one hit. So who absorbs more strikes, who absorbs more of the other's power will make a big difference in this fight. I'm not going to discuss their striking defense because they're very, very similar. In fact, they have a 62% striking defense, both of them do. So I don't think there is much to talk about there. I think when they're standing, it is going to be relatively even though I think Topuria will have the accuracy advantage while Emmett looks to take him out with a big shot, so he will have fewer of his shots landing. If you go to the grappling though, now in the grappling department, Topuria has a very, very clear advantage, and there is no question about it, because he has that Eastern European Russian style. I'm going to go for a double leg takedown, and I'm going to pin you to the fence, and even if you don't go down on the first attempt, I'm going to keep going after you. I'm not going to release you till I take you to the ground. Now when I take you to the ground, I'm going to grab your legs and squeeze them between mine, put all my weight on your torso, and lift your legs up, keep them above your head so that you can't get up, and I'm going to keep putting that pressure on you, like like a large bag of coal that is dumped on your face, right? So he has that style of wrestling, and he does not have an equal in Josh Emmett in that regard. But Josh Emmett does have very, very good strength in his wrestling and grappling exchanges. So he is very, very strong. As long as he can maintain good positions and not give up his limbs or give up his neck for submissions, he will be able to outstrength Topuria, even if he is not able to outdo him in technique. What Emmett has to be careful of is a repeat of the Rodriguez fight, where he gets caught in some sort of submission because he gets into Topuria's grappling game with a very, very eager, enthusiastic approach, where he is not concerned about getting caught in a submission, but he is far more concerned about putting damage on him. So he has to be careful about that. He cannot willy-nilly start dropping bombs on him when they're on the ground. He has to make sure that he has a very nuanced and a calm approach, because Topuria, in my mind, is a better grappler than Yair Rodriguez, even though Rodriguez is very good. But they have slightly different styles. So Topuria is more of a pressure grappler, so he is going to be on top of you and pressure you more. Yair Rodriguez, on the other hand, invites you into his guard, and he usually stays on the back. So these slight nuances have to be considered, and Emmett has to make sure that he doesn't get caught in a submission like he is said to be liable to. If we go down to takedown accuracies, so yeah, obviously Topuria has a 46% takedown accuracy, so he's hitting almost half of his takedowns, whereas Emmett has 37, and he is not known to look for takedowns as much either. If we look at takedown average per 15 minutes, so Josh Emmett, in about a span of 3 rounds on an average throughout his career, will hit 1 takedown, whereas Topuria, on the other hand, is hitting at least 3 takedowns in that span. So if you look at how they fight, and if you watch Topuria fight, you will realize that he is liable to take you down every round at least once, maybe twice, and then keep you there for an extended period. Even if you try and get up, he will find some way, like I said, to control your legs, to displace you, to change your balance in the right manner and manipulate you back to the ground. So yeah, if he was not keeping people down, maybe I think he could have had a higher takedown average per 15 minutes, but that is what the case is. So I don't think Josh Emmett wants to be under Topuria's pressure and get taken down by him that way. I think he should stay on his feet and avoid those exchanges where he is at a disadvantage with his back on the ground. Takedown defense wise, now this is also a huge difference. This will show you how much of a true difference there is between their wrestling capabilities. So Topuria has a 92% takedown defense. So not only is he very, very good at attacking you in a wrestling exchange, he is also very, very good at not letting you take him down. Whereas Emmett has a 58% takedown defense rate. So it is not bad. It is actually quite good compared to a lot of other fighters. Emmett, like I said, is a very, very strong wrestler, and it is not easy to take him down. But he will have to use all of his capabilities, whatever techniques he knows, and all of his strength to keep Topuria off, because he's very, very good at taking people down, and he also defends takedowns very well. So Emmett cannot realistically say that he will take Topuria down to avoid getting taken down himself. He most likely does not have that option. If you look at submissions, now again another glaring difference. Josh Emmett is not really known for his submissions. He has a 0.1% submission per per 15 minutes. So that's nothing to speak of. Now, if you look at Topuria, on the other hand, at an average of the 15-minute slots of his fighting time, he is hitting about 2.5 submissions every 15 minutes, which is very, very good. So every fight he is trying to put in 2 submissions plus, and often succeeding. If you know Topuria, you would know. So like I said, in the grappling exchanges and the wrestling exchanges, Emmett just has to make sure that he doesn't get taken down and he doesn't engage in that much, because he will have to stay on his feet and use his best asset to win this fight if he does win it. Whom would I give this fight to? I think, even though Josh Emmett is one of my favorite fighters, because he can fight. He's not one of those fighters. He's not an Israel Adesanya who's gonna come into the octagon and fight Yoel Romero and dance around him and just waste 5 rounds. He comes to bang. He comes to fight. He wants a war every fight, and so does Topuria, because Topuria is hungry and he wants to prove a point. So this is going to be a very, very good fight, and in my mind, unless Josh Emmett connects with Topuria, in that case, yes, he could win. But beyond that, if he is not able to pull Topuria into a wild striking exchange where Topuria does that instinctive thing of putting his chin up and just swinging at the opponent with no regard for his defense, unless he can do that, I think Emmett will lose this fight, because Topuria is far more well-rounded and he is a very, very good striker himself. He has a lot of power himself as well. So on the ground, Topuria wins, no questions asked, and even if he's not winning in the striking exchange, he will most likely take Emmett to the ground and then change the dynamics of the fight there. I think Emmett has to stay on his feet if he has to win, and he has to find a way to connect with Topuria's chin and keep his defense intact while he's at it. A tall order, which is why I'm going for Eli Topuria. Now, this was the preview of the fight that is going to happen tomorrow morning on the UFC Fight Night card, and this is the main fight. I want to talk about the previous fight night where Cannonier and Marvin Vettori fought, but I'm going to do that in another video which I'll be putting up very, very soon. Some of you might be asking why I did not speak on the Oliveira Dariush card, or the Irene Aldana and the Lioness, how can I forget her name? She just retired and I've already forgotten her name. Anyway, so I didn't speak on that card, the main UFC card in Vancouver, because I was very disappointed by that card. I think apart from the Oliveira Dariush fight, which was slightly disappointing in its own way, but it was a very, very good fight as long as it lasted. Apart from that fight, I didn't really see too much that excited me in the top few fights. I had a lot of hope from the Nate Landwehr fight, but Landwehr got overwhelmed quite easily. So it wasn't a very exciting card. wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be. But the Cannonier Vittori card was very, very good. Almost all of the fights were excellent. So I will be talking about that card. I will be doing a review, especially because I want to talk about Cannonier's performance against Vittori and Vittori's performance against Cannonier as well, because we saw some very interesting things about both fighters in that brilliant barn burner of a fight. Anyway, guys, so this was the Emmett versus Topuria preview. I hope you get to watch the fight tomorrow, because I think it is going to be a very, very, very good fight. And yeah, before I go, another fight from this card is so this guy that I'm very, very fond of, who might not be as popular as other fighters are. His name is Puna Soriano. Yeah, Soriano. Yeah, Punahele Soriano. So that guy is also fighting on this card. It's a very difficult name, I know, but he is an Hawaiian fighter, if I'm not wrong. Very, very strong, very, very powerful, and a very, very quick ender of fights. So yeah, do check his fight out. It will be towards the early section of the main card, I guess. And then yeah, the Josh Emmett Topuria fight, of course, is going to be a good one. If you enjoy some other fights on the card as well, drop a comment. We can talk about them, and let me know what your opinions are. Like, share, comment. Yeah, I think I've covered all of these things. Yeah, and see you next time.